A new product is supposed to be exciting, right? I get to tell you about all the cool new features, like the massively upgraded 80 watt-hour battery, the second USB-C port that does 40 gigabit per second and can even work with Thunderbolt external GPUs, and of course, the minor improvements to everything from buttons to ergonomics to specs. But the Ally X is so flipping expensive and comes so closely on the heels of the original Ally that if I'm anything like you and I've got a first generation Ally, which I do, I'm looking at this thing going, oh my God, you want my money again? And for a 10% performance improvement at 1080p? Oh, the battery life. Guys, that's the standout to us. This thing manages 14 hours in our endurance battery life test and 2 hours in our stress test. And somehow it manages to do that while only being about 11% heavier. In fact, when I did my initial impressions of this, I had a hard time picking out whether I was holding the Ally or the Ally X. And a big part of that is that they haven't changed the ergonomics that much. The ABXY buttons sit a little bit more proud to the face. The D-pad has been improved with more clear delineation between all 8 positions. And the joysticks have a little bit more resistance on them. Although that does come with a benefit. They are now rated for 2.5 times the number of rotations compared to the ones on the original Ally. We've got Hall effect triggers again. Click here, nicer feeling shoulder buttons, and a big improvement to the back buttons. Now they can be actuated really however you want. You can kind of slide across them, you can push down on them. Really like this. We've got larger air intakes, a thicker internal heat pipe, and a third exhaust grill that together contributed to both quieter and cooler operation in our testing. And up at the top for I/O, we've got a fingerprint sensing Windows Hello power button, a headphone microphone jack. Ah yes, the micro SD card slot that led to so many challenges with the original Ally, although to ASUS's credit, they have finally addressed that with the community. Volume rocker, and of course, that second USB-C port that I was really happy to see. And normally it doesn't matter, but every once in a while I run into a situation where I'm like, gah! I wish the Ally had a second USB-C port. Okay, I'm on a plane. I got a portable monitor, and I realized I forgot to bring a dongle that supports pass-through charging. So I had no way to charge the Ally and also output to my portable monitor. No one seems to feel bad for me. Okay, it's a champagne problem, but a problem nonetheless, and one that ASUS has addressed. Got a 65 watt charger, which is nice to see included at all, but doesn't support the maximum charging speed of the Ally X, which is 100 watts, and that you're definitely gonna want if you're ever in a hurry when you're charging, because an 80 watt hour battery is flipping big. Ah yes, warranty information form. Awkward. There, now I'm done with accessories and I can get back to what matters. The Ally. Oh, okay, no, I'm sorry. There is 2 more accessories. There's no kickstand on the Ally X itself, but ASUS does include little cardboard stands. And you get 2, just in case you lose one. Apparently these were included with the original. I never noticed. Maybe because they aren't very good. You can't even adjust the angle. Thanks, ASUS. And thanks, our sponsor.
Thanks to Charge for sponsoring this video. Check out their ShortCircuit 140, your new on-the-go power-up buddy for your phone, laptop, and more. It's got a huge 20,000 milliamp hour capacity, 140 watt dual port or 100 watt single port outputs, and it's compact and airline safe. With a smart display and long-lasting Samsung batteries, you can keep your devices juiced up anywhere. Grab a ShortCircuit 140 using the link in the description.
You know, I was expecting the display to be the first thing that stood out to me, but as I launched Steam Big Picture, it's actually the speakers. They've got a much fuller sound than the original Ally, and as one of those monsters who does the vast majority of my handheld gaming with speakers rather than headphones, I'm sorry everyone. That makes a pretty big difference to me. I'm actually gonna go crab rave before I even fire up a game here. Operating Windows on a handheld gaming PC is always gonna be awkward. That's something that the Steam Deck just does so much better than any Windows handheld can do at this time. But one of the reasons that I daily drive an Ally instead of a Steam Deck OLED is that game compatibility is damn near perfect, and that's only gonna get better with the improved hardware in this new iteration. They still don't compare to something like a MacBook, but they're definitely better than the old one. Okay, let's, maybe we'll go Forza. You may not proceed without being signed into a profile.
You may not proceed without being...
Well, what am I allowed to do?
You may not proceed without
There's no option to close the game. God, modern gaming sucks.
You may not proceed without without being signed into a profile.
The device is upgraded. It's now available with up to a 1 terabyte SSD out of the box and supports longer 80mm sticks so that you can put in up to an 8 terabyte drive. It has 24 gigs of RAM instead of 16 gigs of RAM this time around, and it even runs at a higher 7,500 megatransfers per second, which when you're using onboard graphics, which uses your system RAM, can make a significant difference to system performance. In fact, at 1080p, we saw an approximately 10% uplift in FPS in games. However, on a device like this, you oftentimes wouldn't be running at 1080p, you'd be running at 720 in order to get the best performance. And at 720, we found that we ran into other system bottlenecks before that increased memory clock speed really made a difference. So just like the original Ally, it clocks down from 30 watts to 25 watts when you're away from the wall, even in its turbo operating mode. But to take advantage of the bigger battery, in the lower performance modes, it goes up to 13 and 17 rather than 10 and 15, which does result in a measurable performance improvement while still maintaining better battery life than the original Ally. There's other quality of life improvements. It's easier to access the SSD for upgrades, it runs quieter, and the display now gets dimmer if you're the kind of person who games in the dark and doesn't want to melt your eyes out of their freaking sockets. But none of those things are big enough to overcome two major obstacles that are facing the Ally X. One is that the original Ally offers a lot of the same experience, and two, it does so at a much lower price. The Ally X is coming into a marketplace that is absolutely flush with competition from the likes of Valve, Zotac, Ioneo, Lenovo. There's so many players in this space now. It might still be among, if not, the best handheld gaming PCs. But $800 before I even put a decent sized SSD in it? Good Lord! What's a 1 terabyte Steam Deck OLED? $650. And yeah, this has advantages, but so does the Steam Deck OLED. I mean, that screen. Oh, so nice. And making things even more awkward, we're already starting to see rumors of what the performance of RDNA 3.5 mobile graphics are gonna be. Now, the word on the street, and I didn't hear this from ASUS, is that AMD's upcoming Strix Point processors that feature those graphics are gonna be so expensive that this would have been more like $900. But I've gotta wonder, guys, with how much more performance it would offer, would that be more justifiable as an upgrade? As it is now, if I'm looking to buy a handheld gaming PC and I have a functionally unlimited budget, this is gonna be a strong, if not the contender. But if I'm upgrading from something older, I don't know if it has enough on offer. I know the battery life, damn it, the battery life is incredible. It's so much better than it should be on paper. Like, it's double the size, and yet it manages 3 times the real world performance. That, and I have one of the OG Allies that has the dimmer 400 nit screen. As it is now, the later model ones seem to use the same 500 plus nit screen. I think only you guys can judge. Is this thing worth the increase? I mean, yeah, sure, you get rid of the proprietary XG Mobile external GPU connector that costs so much, but you add a Thunderbolt connector that you're gonna need an enclosure for your GPU that costs so much. It's a really complicated story. What's not complicated is subscribing to ShortCircuit. Make sure you do it.